this. Now it turns out a lot of these people were more dodgy than we thought at the time. Does anyone know who that is? Okay, he formed a record label called Def Jam. And to me, there were few better record labels than Def Jam. So how did he start? He started by putting on gigs, by running club nights. He was your age. And he thought, I know what people like. I know what they need. I know young talent. And he's responsible for one of the great revolutions in music, which is bringing hip-hop to the mainstream. Brought hip-hop, rap to the mainstream. But I think Russell Simmons got a little bit lucky, because his first client lived in his house with his mom and dad. So his brother was in Run DMC, one of the pioneers of commercial rap. So he was really, really well placed to see what was going on the street. But the first act, and he brought them to, no rap act had sold as many records, certainly no black rap act had sold as many records as Run DMC. So he was very, very important, but he also got very, very lucky that his brother was incredibly talented and was part of the new revolution in music. I'm a child of punk rock. In the background you have Paul Weller, who was in a band called The Jam. And Paul Weller, they were young, they were part of the punk movement, and his dad was his manager. And people thought, oh, that's so lame. But it's one of the longest lasting relationships in management. And Paul Weller's dad, John, died recently, but for over 40 years, they worked together, incredibly successfully. It can work out. So it could be your mom, it could be your dad, it could be your brother as your manager. And then the next slide coming up, I want you to brace yourselves. I tried to find the worst slide ever displayed on here. And I think I've managed it. And if you Google high school sweethearts, you'll get this. And this is not any of your AI slop, but this exists. And it's gone up like a little record. I just thought that's so embarrassing. That should be in my slideshow. So if your manager is not your mum, not your dad, not your brother, would a really, really good person to manage an act be the person you went out with in school? How often has that worked out in business? Okay, now that's a different class, and I'm not qualified to take it, but I know people who can. So next week there'll be a class on how your relationships ended, and there'll be a hug-a-thon over there. No, but it's a fair point. Like, how did you end it? How did they end it? So here's a nice example of high school sweethearts. Got a photograph. I like this photograph. And young people in high school, and they found each other. And they stayed together, kind of. But there is what to me would be kind of a red flag. And I want to see if you notice the red flag. So Sharita, in high school, dated X. I'm just calling him X right now. Throughout high school. Now, he was arrested for cutting off her ponytail. She did have a restraining order against him, but despite that, the relationship thrived. And it worked out. And they stayed together. But to me, there's a bit of a red flag there. For any of you who have a load of ponytails in your drawer at home. Couples stay together, and here they are a little bit later in life, where they were no longer together. Now, orange is not the greatest colour on a lot of people, for various reasons. Does anyone know the gentle person in orange? Yeah, Suge Knight. So this is Suge Knight and his high school sweetheart. And the high school sweetheart, I think she's brilliant, I love this woman. And she managed Snoop Dogg. And I'd love you to consider how easy that life would have been, managing Snoop Dogg before he was Snoop Lion. But now he's at the Olympics, he's at the Winter Olympics. So he's gone mainstream. But I would say that was a difficult job. But it's not unknown for a wife to manage an act that's on the husband's record label. But you'd have to think carefully about that. Is that good for you as the client? So sometimes relationships are quite close. And then this one. I thought some of you may not want to be managed by a family member or by your spouse. And this is from a film, Debbie Reynolds dressed up as a nun. And the line describing this photo is, the singing nun captivates her convent with her lilting voice and guitar. That's a lovely photograph. That's a beautiful scene. And it's based on a true story. And the true story is about a nun from Belgium who had a global #1. She knocked the Beatles off #1 with a song called Dominique. She toured. She was incredibly successful. And the question for you, for any of the nuns here, if you're a nun, is the head of the convent your manager?
Jesus.
And the answer is yes. And in fact, the Pope is your manager because of the hierarchy. And you can take it further as well. And so this nun, she was a young nun, she played guitar, she loved playing guitar, and the head nun hated her, and hated her playing guitar. And some of the other nuns were going to Africa to work, and they said, will you record some of your songs so we could take them with us and they'll remind us of home and they'll make us happy? And the head nun said, no, can't do that. But eventually she was persuaded. And then they went to a recording studio in Brussels, and there was a guy from Polydor Records who heard them and thought, this could be huge, this could be global #1, and it was. And the head nun took the songwriting credits, because she changed a couple of the lyrics. The head nun owned the nun's name, and the nun did eventually leave the convent, and she couldn't use her own name that she was famous. And it's tragic that she later committed suicide. And that's the story that I begin my book with. The story of the singing nun, who was this global superstar. Her life was made into a film that was totally a sanitized version of what really happened, and she didn't even own her own name. So sometimes management can be very cruel. So what kind of manager will you be? Will you be the cruel manager managing your sister or your parents or your children?
Or will it be you two and just split everything?
Is that Dawn again, down the back? Dawn,
There's
touch
always
it.
a person at the back that's the messer.
Yeah. Okay, so Dawn, let me tell you a little bit about it. You two split in everything. They don't.
Yeah.
No, they used to.
Oh, I thought they did always.
Yeah.
That was the
Yeah,
plan.
lovely. So what was the plan? And some bands split everything. I'll give you a good example of a band that split everything. The Red Hot Chili Peppers. Split everything. The drummer, even if he's not there when they write the song, he gets a quarter of the song, just for being in the band. So, Dawn, you're right, it's a lovely thing to do, it keeps everyone happy.
I think Coldplay does it as well.
Coldplay might do it. Lovely, it keeps everyone happy. And you two did it at the start. But there are two components to a song, lyrics and music. If I write all the words, if I'm a poet, should I give the drummer part of my creative output? Or should we just share the music? So it starts getting difficult. And then if you become really successful, do you decide, well, the bass player and the drummer, they don't really do everything, so should they get a smaller portion? So the U2 situation is a great one, but it has evolved. Okay, so families are organic, so you might think at least there's some hope. And then there's manufactured. Do you know any manufactured bands? Okay, some of you do. I've got some photographs of bands that I regard as manufactured coming up, so brace yourselves. Yeah, those are some lads I met on the bus. Coming out of St. Andrews, wearing the St. Andrews uniform. Now, could they look any cuter? No. Like that's such a great look. Great for hunting, shooting pheasants, and whatever you want. Like they're ready to rock. But you know, K-pop has become so big. But there are managers behind that who are giving us the music that we love. And I want to know about those managers. What are they doing? What are they qualified to do? What decisions are they making? What are these beautiful people doing? What decisions are they making? So you know a little bit about K-pop. And here's one of my favourite bands coming up next. And there's a prize. I don't know if you got the memo. There's a prize if you can name the members of the next band. So put up your hand if you can, yeah, €100 cash. If you can name the next band members. Yeah, so this is my favourite band. They're called AKB48. Now 48, you might think, it's because there's 48 of them. That's not why they're called AKB48, because there are 72 of them. Yeah, and there's a bunch of different ones that go on tour. So they might be playing 3 different places. And you vote. I know what you're looking. I know because you're all judgy. And you're looking at, she shouldn't be in it. I know you've picked the weak one. And you're right. So people vote on who gets to stay in the main band. And more people voted in the last election for who would be in this band than live in Ireland. So there were 4.5 million votes. You have to buy the votes. If you buy the CD, there's a voting slip in it. And I know, and you're picking the ones already. So this is very, very manufactured. And very, very disposable in a way. Any other examples? I was going to say for Dawn. But for people of my era, Dawn's too young.
I'm so much younger than you.
I know. Yeah. So, Dawn, your parents might have known about this, they might have told you.
I'm not closer to anything.
So this band are called the Bay City Rollers. And there was a time where every boy in Sallynoggin looked like this. And the girls too. So this fashion revolutionised Ireland. You'd see them down Dean's Grange Crossroad in the platforms with the tartan.
And the mullet is back in fairness, so.
Now, Don, you say the mullet is back. It never went away. Yeah, it was all Waterford, Tremor. Those guys never gave up. But here's another boy band, and this is important. Any of you who went to CBC Monkstown, you'll see the Monkstown socks there. They had a sponsorship deal to try and attract students. But this was where Ireland got involved with the boy bands. And all of their songs were written by a songwriter from up the road in Belfast. But very much a manufactured band. And there's another one. A band called Menudo. Now they've got a great business model. And as soon as your voice broke, you were fired. You might recognise Ricky Martin in the front there. Very young. Yeah. Pardon? The band were called Menudo. Yeah, but can I answer that question in a different way? When you said, what was that band called?
They're still going?
They're still going. And they're all still the same age. Because as soon as you get to be 16, you're fired, you're too old. Get a job in the Gap. Or wherever.
how you pronounce it?
Menudo. But when you Google it, Don, you're going to get a photo of a whole bunch of stews, because it's also the name of a dish in Puerto Rico. So put in group. So we're back to Malcolm McLaren. Now, do some of you know, if I say the Sex Pistols, do you know? Okay, you know what I'm talking about. And quite obnoxious, revolutionary. Do any of you think the Sex Pistols are a boy band? Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
when they started.
Yeah, so to me they're a boy band. That's how revolutionary they were. But that's how they were, and they absolutely were a boy band. Malcolm McLaren had a shop, and his shop was called Sex. And he wanted publicity for his shop, so he thought, I'm going to put together a boy band like the Bay City Rollers, and I'm going to have auditions, and I'm going to call them after my shop, so I'll call them the Sex Pistols, and they were absolutely a boy band that were manufactured. They weren't organic, they didn't come together on their own, they were put together by a shopkeeper to publicise his shop. And he got a friend to help him, a friend called Bernie, a man called Bernie Rhodes. And Bernie was delighted, because he used to make t-shirts for Malcolm, and he was kind of in the fashion business. And he thought, this is great. We've got a band and they're on the front page of newspapers. They're controversial. People are going to see them. They say rude words. He was having a great time. And he was really happy to be involved. And then Malcolm McLaren said, you know what? I don't need you. Go away. You're fired from being the co-manager. And Bernie was really upset because he loved managing the band. It was very exciting. So he thought, I'm going to found my own boy band. And he did. He had auditions. There he is with two of the people he managed, Joe Strummer and Mick Jones. He's in the background. And there he is with his boy band, The Clash. So the two biggest punk bands were both manufactured. Now, do I love them dearly? Absolutely. Does it hurt me that they're a boy band? It does. And I've tried to deny it, but it's really helped me understand management as well. That sometimes talented young people need someone to help them, to say, you're good at this, I'll help you. I'll look after the business. Yeah, clusters. So this guy, this weirdo, Malcolm McLaren, runs a shop. And it's the type of shop where if he doesn't like you, he'll tell you to get out. If he doesn't think you look right, if he doesn't think you look right in his clothes, he'll tell you to get out. Even if you're Mick Jagger. So he told Mick Jagger to get out of the shop. Oh no, you can't buy any of our stuff. So he was very, very particular in the way he did business. But that shop, that really terrible idea of a shopkeeper forming a boy band to draw attention to his shop, that was part of a cluster that completely revolutionised pop music. The guy who was helping him with the Sex Pistols at the start goes on to manage the Clash. This woman, Jordan, worked in the shop. And she managed her friend, who's in the photo there, whose name was Stuart Goddard, and he changed his name to Adam Ant. So the girl who worked in the shop managed Adam the Ants, and they became hugely, in 1980, 1981, they were probably the best-selling group in Britain. They did well in the States as well. So out of that cluster, we get the Clash, the Sex Pistols, and Adam and the Ants. Someone else who worked in the shop, Neil Stevenson, managed someone who used to hang around the shop, Susie Sue. So Susie and the band, she's come out of this cluster. So some of the bands that revolutionised British pop music came out of this really, really terrible idea of a shopkeeper wanted to form a boy band. Yeah, we have time for a few more slides. Does anyone recognise that? Now there's a hint, if you can see the photograph. Who's in the photograph dancing? Can you see the woman in the photograph dancing? Correct, it's Cilla Black. And this is Cilla Black's manager, who also managed a band called the Beatles. So this is Brian Epstein, and Brian Epstein, from my research, is the most successful manager that ever lived, that ever worked in the music industry. No one has ever been as successful as Brian Epstein. He completely revolutionized pop music. No one has sold as many records. And I love Taylor Swift, and I love her dad, who looks after her business. I love her enterprise ability. But I think Brian Epstein arguably was a more successful manager. But she's got time. And there he is with his clients, the Beatles. Now there's a couple of things that are really interesting about it. This is the most successful manager-client relationship ever in the history of the music industry, going back to 1963, so it's over 66 years ago. -ish. He had never managed a band before, and I think that's really great for everyone in this room to know. That there's no reason why any of you couldn't manage the biggest act on the planet. He worked in his parents. His parents were business people. They were Jewish, lived in Liverpool. They had a big shop. And he worked in the record department. He had gone to RADA, he wanted to be an actor, but that hadn't worked out. So he had zero experience as a manager. And he found this young band and he believed in them and he made them incredibly successful. He saw them as family. He was deeply unhappy in many ways. He was gay at a time where you couldn't be gay and be out in Britain. He was arrested for being gay in a sting operation organised by the police. So he was deeply disturbed, deeply unhappy, and he found these young lads and he loved them and he devoted his entire life to them and made them very happy for a few years. And Brian Epstein totally changed the music industry. When he died very young, and John Lennon said, we knew it was over then, because no one could ever do business. No one could look after us. And why he's a remarkable manager, he made lots of mistakes, but he did most of the things he did right. He completely believed in these young people. And he thought whatever they need, they should have. So he never let record labels tell them what to do. He didn't get involved with songwriting with them. He let them get on and make their music, and he protected them from the business by doing all the business around them. And so we will finish with Brian and the Beatles sitting at the table. But thank you so much to Deirdre and to Sarah Searson for letting me be here. I did a talk. It's lovely to get invited to do something, but it's even better when you get invited to come back. And so this series of talks that's going to take place, we're going to have our class here. People are welcome to come for the first hour, which we've just had. So thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've learned some stuff. And we're going to take a break then. We're going to take a break. Yeah. So thanks very much for anyone who came. Lecture's over, and for anyone who's coming to my class, take a 15-minute break, walk up here, and then